Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Raw Politics. Around June this year, that is 2024, during the Gen Z's fiasco, most of the pawns, the people who were being used for this particular agitation, when asked who their favorite candidates were, they almost unanimously mentioned one Fred Matiang'i, the former CS for Interior. Then the fire died. The issue of Matiang'i being a candidate died. But then, today, Nation Media carried a story. In this story, Nation was saying that Matiang'i had contracted an election firm that helped the current Botswana president to defeat the incumbent. They were saying that Matiang'i was preparing a political war chest to come and give Ruto a run for his money in 2027. This particular media house was declaring that actually Matiang'i is a candidate in the race of 2027. What we answer in this particular video are two simple questions. Number one, does Matiang'i have a fighting chance should he choose to vie? And number two, what is the real reason why Matiang'i may even choose to vie? If those are things you are interested in, stay tuned. And if you're watching for the first time, consider subscribing to this channel so that you don't miss similar videos. Like I said, the so-called Gen Zs said their preferred presidential candidate was Matiang'i. So who is Matiang'i? Just a brief history. Matiang'i was in the academia teaching before. Then Uhuru taps him, brings him into cabinet when Uhuru was elected in the first term. He is in as the CS in terms of ICT. Matiang'i is credited for digital, analog to digital migration, if you can remember, analog to digital. So he was behind the digital migration. And then he was moved to the Ministry of Education, where he is credited for reforming how exams were done, national exams were done, and how results were delivered. Those are things that are credited to Matiang'i. In fact, Kenyans started loving Matiang'i, and they were even asking other civil servants to copy Matiang'i, learn from him, and be proactive and be reform-oriented. Then Matiang'i was moved to Ministry of Interior, and his star started to fall. Let me explain. In the Ministry of Interior, there is nothing specific that you would credit Matiang'i for. However, you would remember that during his time at the Ministry of Interior, Matiang'i spent most of that time politicking, attacking the then Deputy President, Dr. William Ruto, and even undermining him, calling him a sympathy addict, giving very funny orders to law enforcement officers to deal with Ruto whenever Ruto had events in Nyamira and other places that Matiang'i was feeling like Ruto should have been rejected. And so what people remember is how Matiang'i became political at the last moment. And he did not just stop at those particular harassment. Matiang'i went ahead and registered a political party, and he was so much into Azimio, he believed that they were going to win. And remember, according to the Azimio deal, Matiang'i was supposed to be retained as the CS for Interior. Of course, they failed. They flopped. Kenyans could see through them and voted for William Ruto instead. After that, Matiang'i was a little bit vocal. He ran into some issues with the law and then disappeared into states until we started hearing about him around June, when the so-called Gen Zs were on the street and when some of them were being interrogated and asked, who is this favorite candidate you want to replace Ruto with? Some didn't know, but others were like, Matiang'i is the best person to vote for. And now that the media is confirming that Matiang'i is on the ballot, let's go with that and look at whether he has a chance or not. Let me just be very blunt. Matiang'i can only have a fighting chance if he is adopted by the Kikuyus as their candidate. come 2027. The challenge with that is that Kikuyus have already given Kalonzo a hint that they will support him. So that means that if they were to adopt Matiang'i as their candidate, they would have to find a way of convincing Kalonzo to kill his candidatures and support Matiang'i. And like I said, that would not be enough. They will also have to find a way of convincing Raila Odinga to support that particular arrangement. Then, ladies and gentlemen, Matiang'i will not only have a fighting chance, he will be Matiang'i the sixth. But that is easier said than done. You see, for Kikuyus to adopt Matiang'i, they must be sure that he also has support elsewhere. And so where else would Matiang'i look for support? Two areas. The notion of the Gen Zs being a voting base, Matiang'i can rely on that. Or the traditional way of getting a base, he goes back to his tribe, the Kisis, and convince them to support him. The challenge with both is that the Gen Z vote is not a dependable one. Malema, Peter Obi, and Kamala Harris can tell you that the support you get from Gen Z does not translate into actual votes. So, if he is going to depend on an imaginary Gen Z voting bloc, he would lose before he even vies. And if he's going to depend on the Kisis to support him, this will be difficult in that since 2013, the Kisis have voted with Luos, meaning whoever Raila will tell them to vote for, they will. Whoever Luos will be voting for, chances are very high that Kisis will be voting for that particular candidate. And so that's why I was saying initially that you have to find a way of also convincing Raila to endorse the candidature of Matiang'i. But just him going to Kisii today and sitting down and telling them that here I am, I want to be your leader, that is impossible because the likes of currently Kisii does not have a spokesperson, but the likes of Simbarati are persuaded that they are the leaders of that particular region. And so they are not just going to say, hello, Matiang'i, welcome, and we are going to support you, you are our son. He is not superior to them in anything now. He's not superior to them because he is no longer holding any political position. He's not in position of power. Then he could call shots because he was a CS for Interior and a very powerful one at that. So Matiang'i might not have Kisis. But even if he does, because this is politics and anything is possible, even if he does end up galvanizing the Kisis around him, they are not a significant vote that would catapult Matiang'i to victory. Because I have said before, and I'll say it again, the presidential election of the country is decided by three communities. That is the Kikuyu, the Kalenjin, and the Luos. If two of them join together, they produce the president. You remember 2002, Luos joined with Kikuyu. You have Kibaki as president. 2007, Luos and Kalenjin are together. Of course, Raila won. Kibaki knows his stall. That is why in 2013, Uhuru Kenyatta, even though he had differences with Ruto, he had to go and look for Ruto because he understood that if Kikuyus and Kalenjins came together, he was going to be president, and indeed he became president. He repeated the same in 2017. Even though people thought that Uhuru was going to be a one-term president, he still won because as long as Kalenjins and Kikuyus were united, they were still going to produce a leader. That is why when Uhuru did a handshake with Raila, the first thing Uhuru concentrated on was trying to get Kikuyus from Ruto so that he could bring the Kikuyus and Luo and then produce a president in Raila Odinga. Kikuyus refused and remained with Kalenjin, and that is why Ruto was elected president. In 2027, it's still going to be the same. It is either Kikuyus merge with Luos, okay, and produce a president. It is either Kikuyus remain with Kalenjins and, of course, re-elect Ruto, or Kalenjins merge with Luos and re-elect Ruto. You get that? Either Kikuyus merge with Luos and produce another president apart from Ruto, or they merge with they continue with Kalenjins and re-elect Ruto, or Luos and Kalenjin come together and re-elect Ruto. For Matiang'i to come in and upset that particular scenario, he has to come in, be adopted either by Luos as the Luo candidate, and be supported by another community, either Kalenjin or Kikuyu. It's very difficult for Luos to adopt Matiang'i as their candidate for 2027. It's easy for Kikuyus to adopt Matiang'i, by the way, as their candidate. But remember, that is betraying Kalonzo that they have promised something. And so they will have to convince Kalonzo Musyoka to support Matiang'i, which is also a very, very difficult thing, ladies and gentlemen, considering Kalonzo knows that time is not on his side, and they might also not play second fiddle. You see, Kalonzo cannot be the running mate to Matiang'i. Matiang'i probably, if he's adopted by Kikuyus as their candidate, Kikuyus will give him a running mate from the Kikuyu land, probably in Ndindi-Nyoro. And so Kalonzo, from that particular arrangement, Kalonzo is probably going to run as a candidate on his own. And Kikuyu will have to look for if they can bring in Raila to support that. And I've told you that given between supporting Ruto for a second term or coming and supporting a candidate like Matiang'i supported by Mount Kenya, Raila is likely to stand with Ruto. And so Matiang'i, in my opinion, only has a fighting chance if he can do the impossible. That is, be adopted by the Kikuyus as their candidate, get the support of Kalonzo Musyoka, and get the support of Raila Odinga. Very difficult, but if you can pull that, I can tell you Matiang'i, the sixth, will be the president. But then that is very difficult, so that's why in a realistic way, Matiang'i does not have a chance. But now that it seems like that is very impossible and Matiang'i does not have a fighting chance to even maybe become number 3, why is he vying then? Should he choose to vie? For me, the only reason why Matiang'i would choose to vie is if he is a spoiler candidate. Remember, there is a belief that Matiang'i can come and get the votes of the middle class and the young people. And there's and according to data, it seems the middle class and the young people overwhelmingly voted for Ruto in the last election. So if you want to dent Ruto's voting block, if you want to put a significant dent into Ruto's voting block, you bring somebody like Matiang'i to vie for the sake of just spoiling the votes so that your candidate may have an upper hand against Ruto. You know very well that Uhuru Kenyatta is the one who groomed Matiang'i politically. And so this would be Uhuru Kenyatta's candidate. And if he's vying as a spoiler, meaning that Uhuru Kenyatta would be just funding him to vie for the sake of it, but putting all the resources behind Kalonzo Musyoka to fight Ruto, with the hope that Matiang'i will snatch some votes from Ruto, that would be the only reason, in my opinion, why Matiang'i would vie, just as a spoiler. Make sure that you spoil the votes for Ruto. But will this work? Let me think. No. Why? Because this has been done before. Uhuru has done this before. Remember, in the last election, Uhuru planted Wajakoya. This is not some secret. This is some confession from the Wajakoyas or from the people who were running elections like MATIANGI. They said, we planted Wajakoya to make sure that he gets the youth vote. In fact, the day Ruto was launching his candidature, the same day Wajakoya was doing his. He was funded by the state to ensure that youth voted for him instead of going for Ruto. It didn't work. Wajakoya got very few votes. The votes Wajakoya got were not meaningful. It could not tilt anything. And so, if Matiang'i is coming into the race as a spoiler, he is likely to meet the fate of Wajakoya. He might get some votes, but they may not be significant enough to change anything. That is my view. So, just as a recap, for him to have a fighting chance, he must be adopted by the Kikuyus as their main candidate. Kikuyus then have to convince Kambas and Luos to back this particular candidate. Very difficult, but not improbable. If they can pull that, Matiang'i does not just have a fighting chance, he is likely to be the president. But since they can't pull that, the only other reason why Matiang'i is going to be in the race is as a spoiler candidate. And as a spoiler candidate, his fate will be the same as that of all spoiler candidates, that they get very few votes, that it is meaningless. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my opinion on Matiang'i. I need to give a disclaimer though. This is not based on confirmed reports from Matiang'i that is on the ballot. It's just that some people are saying this is our favorite candidate, and the media is alluding to him preparing our watches for the campaign. And that's why I'm saying, should he choose to run? This is based on should he choose to run. He might not even run in the end. But should Matiang'i choose to run, he has a very little fighting chance. And should he choose to run, he will only be running as a spoiler candidate. And will that materialize? In my opinion, he will go the Wajakoya way. It will never materialize. I hope this was useful. Let me know what you think about Matiang'i's alleged candidature, if he is somebody you can vote for, or if you believe he is a big challenge to the likes of William Ruto or Kalonzo Musyoka. I want to thank you for taking your time to watch. If you have not subscribed, please take a moment, subscribe to this channel. And if you have found value in this particular video, consider liking it and sharing it with friends. Otherwise, let us meet in the next video.